Hello, and welcome to another short box from Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zeckthar, and this week we'll be talking about the Black Crusades, or as the Traitor Legions call them, the Long War.
So as we remember from last week, the first Black Crusade started in 781.M31, and after Abaddon slew Sigismund and claimed his demonic sword, he disappeared back into the Eye of Terror. Now, to be blunt, some of these Black Crusades are rather simple when you think of them as crusades. Remember, Abaddon and the Black Legion think of all these crusades as the Long War. He knows that he can win simply because he has a couple things going for him. Like, 1. He always has a solidified base that the Imperium cannot attack him at, because they cannot go into the Eye of Terror. For those that do, well, they normally simply meet their doom. 2. He always has the element of surprise because nobody really knows when he and his murderous minions will come out of the warp. Which leads us to 3. The simple fact that he has time on his side. Time in the warp is different from reality, which means he has the luxury to wait, if he needs to. Now mind you, this third thing could be a problem for Abaddon too, because as soon as he returns to the warp, who knows when he will pop back out again. Now the reason I explain this is because the 3 Black Crusades we are going to go over would be in any other confrontation be seen as a great battle, not a crusade or war. But I digress. In 597.M32, Abaddon returned to real space and launched his second offensive against the Imperium of Man and initiated
The Second Black Crusade.
This time, Abaddon wove a terrible hex upon a number of worlds close to the Eye of Terror, seeding them with the taint of the Dark Gods. Leading a small band of elite warriors from the Black Legion, Abaddon breached the Imperial Navy base at Bellis Corona. While his fleet launched a diversionary attack against orbital shipyards, Abaddon and his Bringers of Despair, the strongest and most vicious members of the Black Legion's Terminator elite, landed on one of the system's outmost moons. Slaughtering the garrison, Abaddon crafted a complex sorcerous ritual using their mangled remains and invoking a curse that would sink deep into the core of the moon. Only centuries later would the curse awaken at the Despoilers' behest and do its terrible work, unleashing a mutagenic plague upon the Imperial defenders stationed there. Shortly after the assault on the shipyards of Bellis Corona, an attack occurred on the inquisitorial vaults on the world of Nemesis Tessera. The Despoiler toppled its hexagrammic Eldritch Needles, ravaging the Blackstone with sustained meltifier before withdrawing. Hidden beneath layers of ice and snow, the Inquisition had constructed a watch station from which to study the Eye of Terror, along with hexagrammatically warded cells to hold demonic prisoners. It remains unknown if it was the work of Abaddon, but in a swift and brutal assault, one of the cells deep beneath the station was opened, and a demon contained within was released. By the time Battlefleet Corona had mustered to repel the attacks on the core worlds of the Bellis Corona sector, Abaddon had already departed, his mission complete. The inquisitorial forces who tagged along with the Battlefleet raced to secure their hidden facility, but the attackers are gone, leaving only a trail of smoking corpses and spent bolt shells to mark their passage. While this second crusade seems like a flare of fighting against the forces of chaos, it is key, because Abaddon did what he wanted to do: destroy one of these pylons. Now before we get too carried away, we must discuss what these Blackstone pylons are, and why they are important to Abaddon, as well as the Imperium. These pylons are made from Blackstone, a mysterious black-hued stone-like substance of unknown provenance that possesses the ability under certain conditions to outright nullify the psychic energies of the Immaterium, or to absorb them and unleash them with spectacular force. Though relatively rare, it is found on concentrations on certain worlds across the galaxy, particularly those planets that are tomb worlds of the ancient Necron Empire. Blackstone was used by the Necrons, you see, during the War in Heaven to construct special pylon-like devices on various worlds across the galaxy that were capable of creating tetrahedral regions of space-time immune to incursions from the Immaterium. Now, while these pylons are rare, a place you can find many of them was Cadian space, and it wasn't until the destruction of Cadia in the 13th Black Crusade that the Imperium of Man discovered to their horror the true purpose of the Blackstone pylons: to keep the warp at bay. As you can see, if we go all the way back to Abaddon of the Second Black Crusade, he was playing the long game. Remember, he has time on his side, and a simple quick strike to take out one of these impediments of his vision of conquering mankind starts to make sense. From much of my reading and listening to historians talk about Abaddon, there is this seeming lack of respect for the man which I find rather dangerous to those who live in the Imperium. An example would be if you waged war on a large mosquito. Now, while you could chase it around your house with a fly swatter trying to murder it, and trust me, if you happen to get the bugger, happiness is yours. But you could also just simply wait. The thing will die in a couple of months because that's how long they have to live. My point is that he doesn't need to take things personally. He has a life expectancy far longer than anyone in the Empire. He can just simply wait them out. Anyways, moving ahead in history to 909.M32 to when Abaddon launched the Third Black Crusade. Abaddon sent the demon prince Telamon to attack the Cadian Gate, but it was merely a ruse. Using the same tactics that he did in the Second Crusade, he used the main force as a diversionary tactic and led an elite group to the shrine world of Gerstal, breaking the ancient seal of the tomb of the Imperial Saint Gerstal, and utterly destroying his remains whilst the Imperium's attention was directed elsewhere. Now, why he destroyed this tomb, I can't really say. All I know is that it has been prophesied that the saint would rise again when
the eye of darkness opened for the last time, and stem the tide of the treacherous.
Whatever that means. Regardless, once he completed this, he returned to the Eye, while Telamon attempted to take out the loyal Space Marines because Abaddon had convinced the creature that the blood of the loyal Adeptus Astartes would grant an unheard-of strength and the power to crush his demonic rivals within the Eye of Terror. In a gore-soaked assault, Telamon and his minions slew many millions of Imperial soldiers and lured no less than a dozen loyalist Space Marine chapters to battle. Yet in the end, the ferocious warriors of the Space Wolves finally drove the demon prince screaming into the Immaterium. But Abaddon had already achieved his aim, destroying the remains of St. Gerstal and forestalling any chance of the prophecy's fulfillment. Now, real quick, I want to give you 2 points of concept of Abaddon here that need to be addressed. 1, Abaddon doesn't really care about the Chaos Gods, other than the fact that they give him power. He will use them and their allies, like Telamon, until they are needless, and then discard them. And secondly, well, this has little to do with Abaddon, but more on the concept of the Space Wolves. It just seems that every time they're mustered against Chaos, they kind of, well, crush it. Honestly, for every Black Crusade, they should just send the Space Wolves, and the Imperium would just be fine. But, anyways, the last crusade we'll cover in this Vox is the Fourth Crusade, also commonly known as the El-Fanor War. It was launched in the year of 001.M34, when Abaddon and his Black Legion besieged the great citadel of Cromark on the world of El-Fanor. You see, the world of El-Fanor was important to the Empire because it was a stronghold to the Cadian Gate, and a key defense against Chaos Raiders trying to slip out of the Eye of Terror into the Segmentum Obscurus. Commanded by the planetary governor known as the Cromark, it had repelled countless attacks by the forces of Chaos in the centuries since the Horus Heresy. Central to the defenses of El-Fanor was the Grand Citadel of the Cromark, overlooking the vast fertile floodplains of the Erebor. The Black Legion descended upon the world like a plague of darkness, half a dozen war bands of the other traitor legions slavering for blood in their wake. The Imperial Guard struck repeatedly at the attackers, their assault supported by massed artillery from the citadel that remained long beyond the reach of the traitor legionaries. During this Fourth Black Crusade, Abaddon personally led the charge against the citadel's adamantium gates through a storm of heavy bolter rounds and exploding artillery shells. Only a fraction of the Bringers of Despair, Abaddon's Terminator-armored elite personal bodyguards, made it to the gates. The great obsidian road to the fortress littered with the bloodied and broken Black Legionnaires. Trapped before the gate of the citadel, the traitors hammered against the mighty doors, even as the Imperial Guardsmen swept their ranks with fire from above. Raising Drachnian over his head, Abaddon struck the gate with the demon weapon, splitting it like cordwood. With the gates sundered, Abaddon and his followers spilled into the fortress, butchering and dismembering all before them. Abaddon himself took the head of the Cromark, tearing it from his shoulders in a bloody shower of gore, before holding it aloft in triumph. Summoned by a nexus of death within the fortress, and the final sacrifice, hungering demons ripped free of the warp and added to the pandemonium. When the last Imperial soldier was hacked apart, The forces of chaos fell upon themselves, lost in the joy of slaughter. Demons and traitors feasted on the ravaged flesh of Elfinor until it was a dead, wasted planet, and the fortress world of Cadia was left with a chink in its armor. Well, folks, that's all I got for today. But join me next week as we go over both the 5th and 6th Black Crusades. These two Crusades give us a little more of an idea of how cruel Abaddon can be, not just to his enemies, but his friends as well. If you enjoyed this box, please like, comment, subscribe, and follow. And as always,
until next time, this is Zeckthar, signing off.